The first spark of trouble wasn't the charcoal. It was Karen. When I fired up my grill for what was supposed to be a peaceful Saturday BBQ night, I had no idea. I was about to step into the wildest showdown my neighborhood had ever seen. The moment the first wisp of smoke rose, Karen stormed out of her house like she'd been waiting her entire life to catch someone committing a heinous crime. And apparently, according to her, grilling after 6 p.m. was one of them. She marched across the lawn, clutching her clipboard like it was a weapon, and declared loud enough for the whole block to hear, "Your cookout is officially banned by the HOA." That was her opening shot, and I wasn't even done seasoning the ribs. I tried to stay calm. I told her I'd checked the HOA handbook twice, and there was nothing about grill hours. But Karen wasn't here to talk. She was here to dominate. She started snapping pictures of my grill, my guests, even my cooler, as if the cops were going to conduct a full investigation. My friends looked at me, half amused, half irritated, but I knew one thing. Giving in now meant every future. BBQ would be under her control, and that wasn't happening. I told her I wasn't shutting down my cookout, and just like that, her face twisted into the expression she reserved only for her most sacred battles. She yelled, "Fine! Then I'll shut you down!" and stomped away. I figured she'd cool off. I was wrong. 20 minutes later, as the sun dipped and our music played softly in the background, we heard something unexpected. The thumping bass of a much louder party, coming from Karen's backyard. Strobe lights flashed against her windows. Dozens of cars started lining the street. It looked less like a neighborhood get-together and more like a club opening night. The same woman who tried to ban my peaceful BBQ was hosting a full-blown, rule-breaking rager behind her house. And that's when I realized this wasn't just about my grill. This was personal. Neighbors began stepping out onto their porches, whispering in disbelief as the noise escalated. Some recorded videos, others shook their heads, and a few who'd always been afraid to stand up to Karen suddenly realized they weren't alone. The air felt charged, like everyone knew something big was about to go down. And as the beat from her illegal party rattled the fences, I noticed flashing lights far down the street, getting closer. But the night wasn't done twisting yet, because as her party got louder and wilder, someone made a call, one that would change everything. The flashing lights grew brighter with every passing second, reflecting off car windows and dancing across lawn decorations, like warning signals. At first, my guests thought it was someone just turning around, but when the lights didn't fade and instead multiplied, we all knew something big was coming. 2 police cruisers rolled slowly down our street, their headlights sweeping across the chaotic scene erupting behind Karen's house. The music was pounding so hard it made the ground vibrate, and people were pouring in through her side gate like it was a free concert, drinks in hand, shouting, laughing, dancing, breaking every HOA rule Karen had ever weaponized against the neighborhood. I stood at my grill, spatula in hand, watching the spectacle like it was a movie. There was something almost poetic about it. The same woman who fought me over a harmless BBQ was running a nightlife operation out of her backyard, and now the law was pulling up to her front door. As the officers stepped out, I could see neighbors pretending not to stare while obviously staring. Curtains cracked open, phones recording from porches. Everyone knew Karen's reputation, and everyone sensed justice approaching like a long-delayed delivery. The officers approached her house just as the music hit a deafening bass drop that actually shook a garden gnome off her porch. They knocked, once, then again, louder. No answer. Instead, the partygoers kept dancing, screaming, cheering. One officer walked toward the backyard gate while the other circled around the side. And that's when it happened. The gate burst open, and a group of tipsy guests stumbled right into the officer, nearly knocking him backward. They froze. The officer froze. Then one of them yelled, "Bro, the cops are here!" And the entire backyard exploded into chaos. People ran in every direction. Through bushes, over fences, across lawns. Someone fell into a kiddie pool. Another dropped a tray of drinks onto Karen's precious flower bed. The music was still blasting over the panic. Finally, Karen herself appeared, sprinting out her back door with her arms, flailing like a furious flamingo. "Stop! Everyone stop!" she screeched, but no one listened. She looked wild, hair frizzed, mascara smudged, a glow-stick necklace bouncing around her neck. She stormed toward the officer, shouting, "This is my property!" "You can't, ma'am." The officer cut her off. "Step aside, right now." Her eyes widened. She wasn't used to being told no. Behind me, my guests whispered, shocked and entertained at the same time. Some even cheered softly. The irony of it all was too perfect. But then Karen pointed directly at me. "This is his fault!" she yelled. And that moment was just the beginning of a confrontation none of us expected. When Karen pointed straight at me and shouted, "This is his fault!" Every head, officers included, turned in my direction. I stood there mid-flip with a burger patty hovering over the grill, blinking like I'd just been teleported into the wrong scene. My friends looked equally stunned. One whispered, "Bro, how did your BBQ turn into this?" I had no answer. Karen stomped toward the officers, jabbing her finger at me like she was presenting the final villain in a courtroom. "Drama. He provoked me," she yelled. "He started an illegal cookout, so I had to host my event to drown out his noise. This entire situation is because of him." The mental gymnastics were Olympic level. The officer raised an eyebrow. "Ma'am, throwing a party with over 50 guests, loud music, alcohol, and no parking permits is not an appropriate response to a neighbor grilling food." Karen's jaw dropped. 50? There were maybe 20. She glanced behind her. The backyard was a disaster zone. Dozens of people were still fleeing through random yards like they were escaping a zombie outbreak. Okay, maybe 30, but still. His BBQ is what triggered this. At this point, the neighbors had gathered along the sidewalks. Some of them, victims of Karen's past. Meltdowns, finally, saw their moment. Mr. Patel, from across the street, stepped forward. "Officer, she's been harassing this entire neighborhood for years. I have videos." He held up his phone like a prosecutor presenting evidence. Then Mrs. Simmons chimed in. "She tried to fine me because my pumpkin was too orange last fall. And she yelled at my dog for barking once," someone else added. "And she told my kid her bicycle wasn't HOA approved." The officer shifted his attention back to Karen, who was now sweating harder than her glow stick. "Ma'am," he said, "multiple complaints have been called in today. Not only about noise, but parking violations, public disturbance, and unregistered gatherings." Karen's eyes darted around, searching for an escape route. No, you don't understand," she stammered. "I am the HO. I enforce the rules. I'm the one who—" "Ma'am," the second officer interrupted, "you don't have authority to break the rules you enforce." And that's when the final blow hit. From behind the crowd walked the actual HOA president, Ms. Thompson, the one person Karen hated being corrected by. Her expression said everything. "Karen," she said, arms crossed, "we need to talk. Right now." The world seemed to freeze. Karen's face went pale. My guests held their breath. Neighbors leaned in. Even the officers paused, waiting for the inevitable collision. What happened next would change the neighborhood forever. Ms. Thompson stood there like the final boss Karen never wanted to face. Calm, steady, unbothered, while Karen looked like a malfunctioning festival decoration with her glow-stick necklace dimming and mascara melting. The officers stepped back slightly, giving space as Ms. Thompson approached. The entire neighborhood held its breath, and even the music, finally turned off, left an echoing silence behind. "Karen," Ms. Thompson said, voice low but firm, "I've received 10 complaints in the last hour. 10. She held up her phone, screen lit like a scoreboard. Noise violations, trespassing, public disturbance, unauthorized event, and, she tapped the screen, illegal alcohol distribution. Karen's mouth opened and closed, like a fish desperately searching for water or, in her case, excuses. I was just trying to maintain order. She thrust her hand toward me again. "He broke the rules first." Ms. Thompson didn't even look at me. "He was having a small BBQ, a normal one. Not whatever nightclub disaster you turned your backyard into." The crowd snickered. Karen winced. "And," Ms. Thompson continued, pulling out a printed sheet from her folder, "you know the HOA specifically banned you from hosting large gatherings after the 2021 slip-and-slide incident." Someone in the crowd whispered, "Oh, that one." Another muttered, "Legendary." Karen's eyes bulged. "I wasn't hosting a large gathering. It was a community morale event." "That's interesting," Ms. Thompson replied, holding up her phone again. "Because your Facebook post says, Karen's exclusive night rager. No HOA rules allowed." Gasps rippled through the crowd. Someone dropped their soda. Karen froze. Absolutely still. If embarrassment could crystallize a person, she'd have turned into a statue right there. The officer cleared his throat. "Ma'am, at this point, we'll need to issue citations." Karen spun toward him in horror. "Citations, plural?" "Yes," he said, handing her the clipboard. "Multiple." She snatched it with shaking hands. "This is a misunderstanding. A conspiracy?" She pointed around the neighborhood wildly. "You're all targeting me!" But no one backed her. Not one neighbor. Not even the raccoon on the fence, who seemed deeply entertained. Finally defeated, Karen shrank into herself. The partygoers had vanished. The music was silent, the lights were off, and the only thing left was the embarrassing mess she now had to take responsibility for. Ms. Thompson exhaled. "Karen, you're temporarily suspended from HOA enforcement duties, effective immediately." The crowd burst into quiet cheers. My friends fist bumped. Someone whispered, "Peace at last." Karen stormed back into her house, slamming the door so hard a decoration fell off her porch. The officers turned to me. "Enjoy your BBQ," one said with a small smile. And you better believe we did. If you enjoyed this story, make sure to hit that like button. Drop a comment below and tell me what you would have done in this situation. And of course, don't forget to subscribe for more crazy HOA and Karen stories. New episodes every week.